anyway. Special relationships and holy relationships. Hawkins through his research, did some calibrations on vibrations, and this is the way I would sort of say it. So it's like, and I've described this before. It was like when I was working the stock market some 16 years ago, and I had done no spiritual work. I had what I'd call a very inflated ego, meaning that I had a lot of constant thinking all the time, and constant like needing to control everything outside of myself. You know, food, how thin my body was. You know, trying to find a special relationship, with special relationship stuff, dependency stuff around relationships, and work and success. So those were like, and it was like when I was in, you know, had done no spiritual work and also had addiction issues. So it was like, you know, the ego is super inflated. So what does that mean? Hawkins did the research. It's like you're at the lowest. You're at the lowest of the low that the collective human can get to. It's like, then it's like the characteristic. You know, this is the way I describe it. It's like if God is the sun. It's like the God is the sun, and my ego is like a shadow. I think that's a nice one, isn't it? So my ego is like a shadow. By having a very, very strong ego with tons and tons of thoughts, inflated, unconscious and conscious, and a constantly thinking mind, and it's like the ego is always, the solution is always external. You see, I mean, that is the way the whole ego is set up. You see, it's like a solution has to be through something outside of yourself. So it was like at that time, food was the answer, success was the answer, special relationships were the answer. But it was like, how does that feel when you've got such a strong ego, so many thoughts, and such a feeling of emptiness on the inside? It's like there's very, very strong latching on body identification. You feel like you're really, really trapped in the body. The body is definitely you. You're really locked in the body. So strong body identification, or feeling fat, ugly, or whatever it was. But then, you see, we were going to do this in the course lesson, but the Course in Miracles talks about perception and vision. You see the two different aspects. So I'd say I was very, very strong in the ego, had a perceived world of strong fear and, you know, in terms of the Course language, strong fear and separation. Now, in terms of Hawkins, there's different types of fear. So there's shame, there's guilt, there's anger, there's pride, and there's fear. So I guess shame is the most densest form of fear. Then you have things like guilt, which is a little bit better. Then you have apathy. Then you have fear, which is as we understand it in the common language, which is also a reasonably dense form of fear. Then you have like anger and pride. So these are all the major emotions that are lingering in the ego, with strong ego identification, and also in parallel, you get strong feelings of body identification, and the negative emotions tend to predominate, like shame, guilt, fear, or if you're a bit higher, anger and pride, if you've done a bit more evolved. So in that world of strong ego identification and no spiritual work, it's like, you know, a world is what's called perception. The ego is like filtering the whole world. You don't see what the world is like in truth. You're seeing like a distorted filter running through the ego. So the ego is perceiving oneself strongly as a body, strongly as a mind and a collection of thoughts, and is strongly projecting out that one is living in a world of separation. Like, I'm a body over here, you're a body over there, and I'm my identity over here, and you're your identity over there. So that's.
But how does it come together when, of course, all these negative things you have?
Yes.
For the fear and all this, I have a lot of fear. But then also when you truly feel love, that is a feeling in your heart, true love, that is still something real in a way, even though you might mistakenly attach it to a specific person or something. But the experience is a true thing, isn't it?
Yes,
Even
yes.
that is not ego in itself. The thing is that you attach it to it.
Okay.
in a wrong way.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, I'll describe that issue. It's a very, very good issue. Yes, it is real, but it's got very strong ego elements, distortions. Yeah, that's right. So Ramana Maharishi said something that Muji talks about. Ramana, and this really blew me away when I heard this. Many of you have heard this before, which is Muji, which is like when you want something. When you want something, it's like, let's say, like I had this one. You know, I had a huge crush on Carrie Fisher. You know, she played Princess Leia in Star Wars. Some of you may know. I had this huge crush on Carrie Fisher. So it's like, you know, and I was in my addictions and my food. Of course, she would be a special person for me. The princess, you know, that went around to other galaxies, you know, the galaxy far, far away. Anyway, never mind. That's what I used to watch as a boy. So she was what I would call, that's classic special relation. So I was like this sort of, you know, trapped, this fat, ugly, like boy in this body, but you know, I could visualize Princess Leia, watch Star Wars, and anyway, so it was like, of course, it's like I'm empty, and my life is horrible, and I'm full of fear and addiction and all of this stuff, and it's like if I could just, you know, meet Princess Leia, then everything's going to be like okay, you know, it's just a thing. So it's like, so anyway, that's my one. But taking it back to Ramana, if you really, really want something, it's like your ego gets into a kind of like fantasy, kind of like obsession. It would be great one day if I could really meet the princess and could go off in a starship or something, and then leave this galaxy. I don't know, but something like that. Really, I guess it would be if I could enter the Star Wars world, I guess, and live in that world and live it. So anyway, so it'd be like, so there's a thing. So I really now, I'm in a state of, initially in a state of horror and body identification, but now there's this fantasy, see, so it becomes like this is an obsession, that one day if I meet her, it'll, so, and this could be anything. If I wanted a Ferrari, that's the same thing, you know, one day if I could get a red Ferrari, or one day if I could meet Carrie Fisher, or one day if I could be super successful in the stock market. I mean, these are all the same aspects. Or if one day I could be, you know, I even had the one of that's, yeah, us. I could have a thing of, which I did, which I've now forgotten because of the bell. Anyway, yes, I could have a body like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I had that one for a while. So, yeah, I got the weights and everything. So, it's like, so when you have the thing, it's like when you meet the person, so finally you've had all of this stuff of, you know, fantasizing. When you meet the person, what happens is that you go into a state of bliss. You go into like, finally, you know, I've met the person. And what happens is that your ego stops the obsession for a short, it's like you're in fear, you're in body identification, you're in paranoia about money. But when you meet the person, suddenly it's like all the thoughts and all the unconscious thoughts go into silence for a while. And then it's like suddenly you're in bliss. There's the experience of love and happiness and joy. You know, like, oh, I finally met the princess, or I finally got the red Ferrari, or I finally got to be managing director of Goldman Sachs, or whatever it was. And it's like the ego just stays silent, because you've really, really wanted that all your life, and now you've got it. So the ego stays silent. And then there's this bliss, and you're like, you're looking at the princess, or you're looking at the Ferrari, or you're looking at the promotion paper, or whatever it is, or the pay rise. And suddenly there's this overwhelming bliss and love. And it's like, the ego then quickly ascribes, so there's this bliss, and there's this oneness that's there, and this, the ego then, so what's actually happened there is that the ego, which is normally creating a sense of separation and distortion from the light, is now shut up temporarily for a period of time. It might be for a few minutes, or it might be for a few days, or a few weeks, or whatever. And it's like, later on, it comes up like, and this is actually how addiction works for anyone who's been unfortunate to have addiction, later, after you have the bliss and you're with the person, it seems, of course, like the person gave you the bliss. Obviously, it seemed like, oh, I had the donut, now I'm in bliss, or I met Carrie Fisher, I'm in bliss, or I got the pay rise, I'm in bliss. So, but that is actually the absence of thought by the thing. So you wanted it for so long, and now you've got the thing, so the ego shuts up, and you have actually a spiritual experience. It's a state of authentic love. But because you had an inflated ego, and you have a temporary deflation of the ego, when the ego starts to come up again, it says, yes, the princess made you feel bliss and love. So obviously, it now attaches that this is the form of a special thing out there that creates the feeling of love and connection. You know, like if with food addiction, because I was a food addict, it'd be like, I feel so horrible, I'm in my body, and if I eat a bag of donuts, I just feel so happy. I feel connected, I feel myself. You know, there's a whole fellowship with alcoholics and with drug addicts, and the same thing with the special relationship. And you're actually when you want something, you temporarily get it, the ego shuts up, you are actually in an authentic state of bliss. Even though the ego wants to ascribe that object or that food item or that person is giving you the bliss, that's why you feel so much love. What happens afterwards is the ego, after the bliss phase wears off, the ego quickly says, well, you need to be welcome. The ego then says, well, you need more of that person, you need to eat more of that food. It always, you know, so you then become entrapped. And then the fear, like, what if the supermarkets aren't open and I can't get my bag of donuts? You know, maybe I better hoard some donuts. Or what if my girlfriend looks at another man? Then, you know, that would be the end of my... So it's now ascribed, something external is ascribed special status within the ego. It's like I can only feel love and oneness and connection if I'm eating donuts, if I've got the girlfriend, or... and also, then of course comes up this huge fear of loss and everything, because if you're a food addict, you're afraid if you won't have enough food to eat constantly to maintain that feeling of happiness. Or if you're a love addict, or in a special relationship, the idea of that person not being there suddenly creates intense fear. Because it's like, you know, it'd be like if I met the princess, if she suddenly met Harrison Ford, it would be like trouble. You see, I'd have the fear that she could go with another guy. So it's not, but yes, it is true. You know, if I've wanted to meet the princess for a long time, if I do meet her, I will have an authentic state of love and bliss and oneness. But then the ego is ascribing, she gave me the bliss. The ego ascribes, she gave me the bliss. So the bliss is dependent on her being in the room or her staying faithful to me, or her not dying.
But can't you truly enjoy another person's
Yes.
presence? Because they have certain qualities, people are different. Some people you enjoy certain of their character traits, and many in their physical body, everything you kind of enjoy, certain things like, I mean, can you actually become that you don't have any preferences at all? You like to enjoy certain flowers, maybe that's the same with a person, you enjoy certain things and that. Then you can say you say that gives you some kind of pleasure, but that's not how it is then. I mean, the pleasure comes from something else, but how can you still be a human being and enjoy things without preference? Can you ever not have preference? This is even possible.
Well, the you of the ego will always have preferences. But as we're doing the Course in Miracles, we're talking about dissolving the ego.
Yeah, you can. You come to the point where you don't have any preference.
So, well, everyone's. It's not that super. Well, okay. So I think most people have had states of bliss for a few days. When you've had states, and I was speaking to someone yesterday about this, when you've had those states of intense bliss for several days, it's like everything is equally stunningly beautiful. And the body is moving, you know, the flowers are there's just the present moment. There's no ego editing going on. There's just a beautiful unfolding flow of just synchronicity and divine love. And even the self of there's no ego that's saying, I love that particular flower better than the next flower. That is not, that ego that ego editing, what I call, is not going on. There's the absence of that. There's the pure unfolding and bliss. Everything is witnessed in every moment to be just stunningly beautiful, without any selection going forth. It's a state of grace. It's a state of grace, is all I can say. So I think most people have had that for several days, and then most people have had the thing of like, when you're not in those states of grace, and it's like, I'm in the body, and what if that person leaves me, or what if that person is no longer, and that this kind of, and then they come in the room, I'm so happy, and then they've gone out, or they're meeting another man, oh dear, suddenly having those fear-based. So that's a lower level of ego consciousness. So, of course, the enlightened teachers, and admittedly there's not too many of them around, I think, that are authentic, but the enlightened teachers are actually in that state of grace and beingness or witnessing, without the ego editing going on from a personal level. You see, personal level of ego identification. Even the me, the idea of a me trying to enjoy a thing out there, that's when we talk about non-duality. So non-duality and duality. Duality is that I sense myself as an I here, having preferences and things that it likes and doesn't like out there. Which for me, if you've been in those high states, which I always guess that most people who've come to this group have had, in those high states, it's like there's no duality. There's no like selection or editing going on. It's an unfolding oneness that goes forth of bliss and unfolding. So then it's like, so as soon as the I starts, as soon as an identification with me as a thinking identity and body, then of course the thing of I like roses more than daffodils starts. Or I'm so happy because the princess has come into the room, and I'm so unhappy because she's gone. And also it's the personal identity, of course, that has fear and ideas and holds on to the past or goes off into the future. All that framework, that's like booting up a computer, you see, that's starting to operate with its operating software. Starts to go in with preferences, fears, future problems, bad memories coming into the present moment. All of that operating software exists because the I is existing. So yes, the course talks, I'm not a, it says I'm a spirit, because it's trying to break the thing of the ego identity being the absolute truth. So, but I'm not trying to be a killjoy here. I'm not trying to be a killjoy, and I did want to give practical tips. Because that's at the level of non-duality, but in terms of practicality, in terms of special relationships, because I'm not saying that everyone should become an enlightened teacher here, but in terms of practical relationships, it's the thing, of course, is if I'm in a relationship, if I was in a relationship with a girlfriend, I'd be like working my course lessons on it. I'd be trying to remove the specialness out of the relationship while maintaining. So I can still enjoy a relationship with a girlfriend if I decided to have one, but I'd want to move out, because if love is real and love is always here in every moment, infinite love, infinite joy, infinite beauty in everything, and a pure, beautiful unfolding of creation going on, if that's available in any moment, because the idea of separation and specialness means that you feel a lot of love when a certain object is around you, or if you own there's ownership of a certain object, like I own you because you're my girlfriend or whatever, and that idea of ownership or something belonging to me does start to create a lot of pain. So I'd be working on letting go of the aspects of specialness, and it's just a thing of like, if you had a girlfriend, for me it'd be like, because we're talking about special relationships, that's what I tend to think of in terms of special. But you can have special relationships in work, in other areas as well, not just the romantic arena. But it's like, because it's like you're going towards infinite love. It's like you can have love with your girlfriend, and it can be beautiful, or boyfriend, and it can be beautiful. But it's like in the next moment you're in the park, walking through the park. That is also equally, infinitely a beautiful experience. And then even if you're like in the toilet, that can also be an infinitely beautiful, stunning beauty and bliss in the toilet, you see. So it's like you can have the love with the partner, but it's like to have a limit, to go into specialness, is like to say, I want to feel joy and love and happiness only in this arena. So it's like, surely you want to feel love in the workplace. You want to feel love, and you don't want to, you see, like, I think the idea of like having a special relationship with the girl, not meaning that you can't have a girlfriend, but it's like, I want my joy. I don't want to be tracking, having memories of my girlfriends or fear-based thoughts of my girlfriend when I'm in the park. I want to be like absolutely present and in stunning beauty and love and faith and oneness in the park. I don't want my ego like trying to say, like, oh no, I must go back to my girlfriend now and feel happy again. I think that's a limit to love. You know, it's not exclusive.
It is more like if you know there is someone in the background, I can enjoy the other things. Because that is like, it's like, I remember Maharishi in the TM, you know, said once about the meditation, the transcendental meditation, that when you really truly are connected, like in meditation, it's like mother is there, mother is always there. It's that feeling that a child can sit in another room and play by itself because it knows mother is in the other room. And that's the feeling you can have, of course, when you feel connected to spirit, and that you can, wherever you are, mother is there. Yes. And that's how I can feel if there's someone that I care about, and I know that's still in my life somehow. Then I attach it to the person, and do it in that way, so that I feel good when I do the other things because that person. And then, of course, the other side of the coin is the fear then that mother might not be there anymore. I mean, it's the same, but it's that feeling that you do enjoy the other things, because when he said that about the meditation, I felt that is exactly the thing, because you are not. That's a good way of putting it, isn't it? When he said, it's like mother is there. You're not with the mother, you're doing something else, but you know the mother is there. That's why you can do something else and enjoy it, because you know the security is there somehow. That.
You mean the security of the person being there?
When he said it, of course, it was not about a person. It was about when you meditate and if you come to that point where you feel connected to everything.
To the source,
so he meant that it is that feeling, everything is okay, whatever happens to me is okay because mother is there.
Yes,
that's the feeling.
Yeah.
And that's for the feeling I can connect to a person, and the same feeling that when mother is there or that person is there, that feeling. Then when I go out with other people, do think everything's good because mother is there. You know, everything's as it should be, because I feel there is someone in that way. And if there's, for me, it's like some kind of physical. It's something which has to do with the body, not in a sexual way particularly, but more like physical. It's someone you can touch, someone that you feel like there's this physical, almost like when you have a dog and the dog is come home and you touch. Yeah, it's like you feel this body of the dog is there, and if the dog is gone, like people with their dogs, for example, the dog dies and they are completely like, it's worse than a person, almost because they didn't even talk, they didn't have like a human relationship with the dog, but they have this physical presence of this being that they are so used to, and that makes everything feel alright, and then that being disappears, and they have put it on the dog. It's that feeling of the presence of something, and ideally, of course, it would be to have that, what Maharishi was talking about, that feeling about the cosmic mother, then that feeling that mother is always there in that sense, that it's not attached to anything in this physical world. I always know that mother is there, so I know it's all right. But it's exactly that feeling of security somehow, that there is a presence, and for me it's like a physical presence then, this physical presence of it, that I attach to this physical being somehow. And that is, of course, it's not that it's the connection is something big about feeling connected, that's what it is, isn't it? And if I feel connected, then I can go other places and do other things, because I want to secure some kind of connection that is internal, of course, because it's just put on something outside.
Right. That's right.
I know it's internal, I know that's what it's about. It's about that connection, and when I know there is the connection, then it's okay.
But the problem, I think, the way I look at it is, I don't think there is a problem with relationships per se. I think, I don't think we should really make relationships, it's a bad thing. The problem is, I think, the way I see it, that we come from lack. We come from something that is missing, and that is obviously the ego. we operate from an ego state, that we are not whole and the other person is going to complete us. That is the problem. But the thing is, I think we can, I think it is possible, I don't know, I haven't done it. It is possible to transcend the relation, to transcend that, you know, or you kind of, whilst you are in a relationship, transcend that kind of, you know, and you work on that, you work on the issues of, you know, the other person is going to complete me, you know, and you come to the stage of wholeness really, and you know, and the person who are you with is you know, the icing on the cake. Is not really, you know, somebody that, you know, somebody that's not, somebody's not really, because you're holding on to them, and you know, you get, and most of us are, because we are in an ego state. But that is, you know, where the problem lies.
Yeah.
We can work to transcend all that. That's, you know, I think it is possible in theory.
I'm doing my best, but I just feel like it's hard.
I know
It's like an empty space. It's like completely, because I've been by myself most of my life, I'm completely empty, and it's like finally I feel there's someone I can connect to, and it's like just this empty. I don't know how to survive. I have to come further with this, because I just, this is like my biggest challenge in a way, to again. It's like before I didn't have much to lose, because it was a horrible everything, only my whole life. I mean, I could die, but there was not, it was very horrible everything, so it was not many good things to lose. And then when it's better, it's even worse, because it's like, I don't want to lose that then, and then that's empty, and then all this talk, I mean, I see, why can't I see them, that there is something, blah, blah, blah. It's for me, I hear it, but I don't experience it. I don't experience this thing that everything is, because when this is, now I've attached it to a certain thing, you know, person.
That's right.
And when that is, I just try to prepare myself, I have to prepare myself, so when it happens, I'm not complete, I will die. How will I survive? So I'm kind of already then worrying about when it will happen, how will I survive? I'm trying to prepare myself for this, you know, so I won't just die at the spot. And I cannot really...
Well, I go to, I go to these, I won't say which one, but I go to these 12-step meetings, and quite literally, in terms of, you know, love addiction, people commit suicide.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
because the attachment of special properties is so strong that if the person leaves them, they commit suicide. So it can be.
It's so painful. It's just so painful. Like you feel like it's just so painful. Like feeling.
Everything where we need to really work, because obviously, you know, that's, you know, because we all have that kind of, you know, some people have more than others, depending on their own, you know, background, their own childhood, their own, you know, and possibly they have it more than others. For example, you know, somebody might have a really strong sense of being left or being rejected because of certain issues, but then that's where you work, you transcend all that. You need to work to transcend it, to come to the state of peace, and the other person is not really somebody that can make you happy.
Oh, I mean,
it's somebody, you know, I mean, I went to see Rupert Spira last week. You know that he's in a relationship, he's married. I couldn't imagine that he kind of lives in that fear state, that, you know, his wife might leave him the next moment. He doesn't. I'm certain that he doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, I'm certain that he's whole, so, you know, he's kind of two complete human beings, instead of, you know, well, I need you to, you know, complete me, and, you know, I mean, constant fear, because they're already full and whole. But the problem is most of us, we are very much in our ego state, and, you know, so, and we need to go from that ego state to the state of, you know, of wholeness. And
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to share, because I'm really challenging that fear in me, and I was putting a lot of special meaning on friendship. So the special friends, best friend, this friend. I mean, now it was that selection and suffering, and putting demands, you know, we need to be that way. And then I just understood, my God, I'm just missing. And I also questioned, where is that love? Because I love them, but actually I suffer. And once I start challenge this fear, for me was they will leave me and I will be by myself. The life will come and start support me, and I saw that actually I'm not by myself. I'm meeting people all the time. It's just I cannot see friend in them. And now when I start actually see friend in everyone, then I said, wow, this is amazing. I'm on a tube. I'm with my best friend. Today, and I was you again. I want to take advantage of that moment.
Yes, yeah.
So, and I said, wow, actually, now I kind of am clear.
There's a neediness. The problem is the fear. The problem is, that we believe that is the problem. Actually, it's not the relationship per se.
No, of course
It's
not.
just imagine. Because truly,
But how can
it's
you
not.
do that?
It's not.
How do you do that? I mean, I'm completely cut. I'm completely.
I tried. On the street, anyone is your friend. Fantastic.
That is the Course in, that's one of the Course in Miracles
Yes.
lessons. You see the Christ in everyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you don't, you no longer see the
Yeah,
whether
Honestly,
it's the long-term
the same.
friend or the person on the tube, it's the same emotion that you're kind of
exactly.
experiencing.
Even if it's for 5 minutes,
Emotion, I'm not sure.
it gives you buzz.
yeah.
Isn't there I mean, it seems to me what I'm kind of slightly, the logical conclusion of this is that if you actually transcend the any kind of dependence or any kind of
Yes.
neediness, then the relationship becomes meaningless.
Oh,
The relationship with
No.
with the partner becomes it becomes no more meaningful than someone I'm with on the tube.
Ultimately.
So you're
Because
saying that-
because
Why would
because
it
it
be,
seems
wouldn't
like if I kind of understand that the way I'm happiest is if I try and be present in every moment. So I really like this idea that whoever I'm with, that's the person that's my friend, and I love this person even though they're a stranger on the tube as much as I do my partner. And it just seems like because monogamy kind of doesn't make sense if you're enlightened, does it?
Well,
Because it's like if you're, let's take a situation where you're truly in the present moment and two people meet and they're attracted to each other and there's a sexual energy and they want to have sex being fully present in the moment. But then you say, oh no, just a minute, I'm reserved. I'm actually with someone else. So I've got to kind of not be fully present in this moment because I belong to someone else. It seems that that's completely.
Well, you're projecting various things. So the Course talks about perception. So perception, and then the Course talks about vision. So those are two different things. So perception is when you're in the separate identity of the ego and in fear and in various states. So it means then that there is a sense of I-ness that has choice and is making decisions about things and has preferences and you could say attractions and aversions within the world. So when that operating software is working, that we're in the field of dualism, separation, and I as an identity. So that then says, oh, I want to just be with the princess. I don't want to be with anyone else. And has thoughts, if I was to lose the princess or she went off with somebody else, then I'd be upset. So that's the world of perception. So when you do the Course in Miracles, i.e. some of the early lessons, which are my favourite, all my thoughts are meaningless. And actually, like let's say if my girlfriend was in this room, I would be doing the lesson. My girlfriend, and this is what I would do if I had a special relationship, then this is one of the tools I would use. I'd use this one. I'd have a photograph, like if you were my girlfriend, and I'd have a photograph of my girlfriend there. I'd go, my girlfriend is as meaningless as this mug, which is as meaningless as this man, which is as meaningless as the plant. So what I'm doing, because I'm still in my ego, I'm stripping all ego projected meaning from the world. I'm stripping my ego, I'm deleting my ego. But if I fully delete my ego, it doesn't mean that there's nothing, or I become a vegetable, or if I see, so it's like, I would say the Course says only love is real. So you're stripping, the meaning is the ego's interpretation and operation within the world, and source of I as an identity operating in separation in relationship to other. But so there is intense, like the states that have been described, and I know that you've had as well, intense bliss and joy, and just the witnessing and the unfolding. What Hawkins said, and I believe, is that in the early days when you start to have those states, they unfold, And then sometimes there can be a phase of what I'd call naivety, but then the wisdom comes in. You see, so it's like divine love in oneness and wisdom operates. And there's no ego there that is in editing of anything. So it's just a spontaneous unfolding. You could say that God's in the driving seat. And what is happening through the body is, it's like there's no ego there, it's just an instrument. And it's just unfolding. And there's a divine order and a divine orchestration, which is not done. Because you're projecting that if you strip meaning and there's no ego there that can interpret or think of the next action, that there isn't divine wisdom and love that will orchestrate without an ego identity and separation. So it's like, so Buddha talked about enlightenment. He said attachments are the root of all suffering. And he encouraged the release of all attachments, which is the special relationship. Buddha's talking about special relationships. He said that if you have, in terms of special relationships, and this is how I see it, the stronger the attachment, the more you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to get the princess and she's the only princess in the galaxy, and if she was to die or meet another man, then, and I have such a strong attachment to it, that is going to be the root of immense suffering for me. So if I start to, I can have a relationship with the princess, but I'd be working on reducing that attachment. I'd be like doing my Course in Miracles lessons, like the princess is as meaningless as a mug of tea. She's as meaningless as that green plant over there.
But then what's left? Because does the relationship then have the same status as the relationship with a stranger?
Well,
or is it possible to be kind of in a relationship with one person?
Well, you see,
and be fully enlightened.
Be in a relation, that's like God's will, you see. So it's like there is no identity that's thinking of the future or the past or trying to edit or hold on to memories or attachments. It's like there's just an unfolding of creation for that thing. Like Buddha had his life, and that was, I think he didn't get married in his case. Jesus had his life. Some like Hawkins had a partner. So, but it's not, there's no identity, ego as such in separation that is making those choices, you see. That's just the unfolding of creation, like in those bliss things. But there is a wisdom to it. It's not like you're going to become an axe murderer when you become enlightened, or suddenly get married and then suddenly try and have, 500 other girlfriends at the same time. So it's like, God's wisdom is more than stupid wisdom. Because the ego projects that, without my ego I'll be nothing, I'll be a donut, I'll be a vegetable, or I'll be stupid, or I'll just fall in love with the plant and I'll never leave the plant, or something like that. So it's like...
What about you talking about these special relationships? So I'm thinking I'm thinking of my partner,
yes,
who I love very much, due to marriage. So I've got that, there's that special relationship, and she does mean an awful lot to me. And then trying to balance that with the things you're saying. And then also the other people I'm thinking of are my parents.
Yes.
Both of them are very ill at the moment.
Yes.
Like very, very ill. And then so I'm just thinking about this, loss that looks like maybe coming up ahead at some point. And I do feel like I feel such terrible loss because I have got such a special relationship with each of them. Especially I'd say like my partner and my mum, those are the two most important people.
Yes.
I mean, this huge relationship I have, and then my dad, and both parents like very seriously ill. And so then I'm thinking, and it all makes sense, everything you're saying, but then I feel like, wow, so I've got, what do I do now, I wonder.
What would you do?
Yeah, what do I do now? Like basically my dad, he's come out of hospital, he's been told it's like end of life care for him now. Yes. So, and then my mum is also, I think she's about to get a diagnosis of something very serious next week.
So what I do, I know you from before, so I'll go straight. I would do self-inquiry. You can do course lessons, but we've done self-inquiry before. So you're afraid of your father dying or your mother dying, is it, or something? Okay, so do you feel that fear now?
Well, I always feel quite different when I come here. And I don't always feel the same fear I feel when I'm not.
So is there any fear now, or any fear of loss with your girlfriend or with your parents, or is there just that's not present at the moment?
It's not hugely present at the moment.
It's slightly present at the moment?
Slightly present, and even this morning I thought I know I must come here because I know I need this.
Okay.
Because I'm not always, like now I feel pretty okay, but I don't always.
So you're feeling good now? Or you're feeling a little bit of stuff?
Maybe a little bit, but not so much.
Okay, so how's the little bit expressing? Is it thoughts or feelings or what?
I think it is thoughts, even before coming here I went to see my dad, and even there, sitting there and looking at him, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking that he won't be here at some point, and I'm feeling a sadness, even then while he's there.
Yeah.
He's there in front of me.
So there's thought you won't be there after a while.
Yeah, and then I'm making it about me. I'm feeling sad. You know.
And then I'm feeling sad.
Yeah.
You won't be there. So with these thoughts now, so if you hold these thoughts in mind now, can you be that which is observing those thoughts? Can you go to the observer of those thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay, so do these thoughts have any effect now? Are you the observer of the thoughts, or are you the thoughts?
The observer, and there they don't have an effect.
Okay, so...
But I just need to be here the whole time. Can I move in? Can you move in? Let's all move in.
We'll go to, we'll do our groups.
Lord's family, yeah.
We'll do them, we'll all move into his house. You know? we'll do it. So, but there's also another option, which is to watch Muji on YouTube. Which is another option, which will thank you for coming. So is to watch Muji on YouTube. But you see, as soon as thank you. Because we've done self-inquiry before, because self-inquiry is such a fast way. Of course, the course is also another way. So, you know, even in front, I would say a really, really good thing is to do self-inquiry while you're with your parents, you see. Because obviously now the trigger is not good, but even that, the observer of the thoughts is not in distress and has no fear, is not latched to the thoughts even. So immediately you're dissolving the attachment very, very rapidly. You're dissolving that. Another thing to do would be to be with your parents, to sit in front of them and let the thoughts and the fear and the sadness, or even the thoughts of them go, and then do self-inquiry at that point. So as your father or your mother is sitting in front of you, and then the thoughts come up, what's observing these thoughts? You see, ask the question. Or if suddenly a well of sadness comes up, then what's observing, what's perceiving the sadness, you see? So as you go into that, that's a very, very fast way. You keep doing it, you keep sitting. You'll know, because you keep sitting in front of them, you keep doing the inquiry, and eventually you'll start to find that the thoughts become less and less intense, and the feelings start to dissolve. So I would be doing constant self-inquiry. You see, the other thing I was thinking of my parents, who are very elderly, but I think in a similar situation to yours, you see. And what was coming to me recently in terms of the course was, of course, I need to, and I had this idea, but I didn't do it today in the group, but I thought it would be a nice idea. See, but in terms of like loss and attachments, it's like, you see, I'm not a body, I'm free, for as God created me. And my mother is not a body, she is free, because she is as God created her. I'm a father, so that's a course lesson, but it's like, St. Francis says it's in dying that one's born to eternal life. When my essence, if I perceive myself as a physical body, then I will project my parents as a physical body who are about to die and have suffering. But if I'm connected to that which is not a body, i.e. eternal life, or i.e. the witnessing field, then it's like the idea that my parents can die starts to dissolve. But there is an aspect of work in releasing the attachment. So I would keep, you see, as the thoughts arise, they're going to die. Or this could be with a special thing, just go, what's witnessing the thoughts? And then you'll start to find that the witnesser is not having any distressing thoughts. Or even if there's a wave of sadness or tears that come up, what's witnessing the tears? What's witnessing the sadness? And if you can connect to the observer, actually the sadness will dissipate rapidly. So you'll be actually burning off your attachment very rapidly. But I would be like I have been doing with my own parents, because I want to dissolve as much of the attachment before they actually physically die, because otherwise it's going to be more of a traumatic shock for me. So just doing the course lessons of self-inquiry now, you know, if I was at Muji level, then, you know, as they pass, there'd been zero effect, you see. Anyway, I wouldn't see them as physical bodies, and I would see that their essence has not died. And the detachment would have been released, you know, the thoughts of specialness and the suppressed feelings of grief and attachment and sadness would have all have been felt out. So then, actually, if you released all the thoughts of specialness and you let go of your own identity as being that of a body and a collection of thoughts, then if you were at that advanced level, when your parents die, that would be okay. You see, you wouldn't see that they died anyway. That identification, and you'd have felt out your attachment, so there would actually be no tears. But that would be extreme. You know, you'd have to be like an enlightened sage at that level. But you can make progress. You see, I want to make progress. I don't want them dying. I know all the work I do now, because I want to have zero attachment. I mean, I'd prefer to have zero. I know they would. You know, it's not horrible. I'm sure my parents wouldn't want me to suffer when they're gone. I'm sure they'd probably say, "Well, we want you to be happy, joyous, and free, and just carry on with your life." So I don't see that the suffering and the tears and the upset is going to benefit my parents, would be good for them, or that they would wish it for me. So I think in the spiritual essence of all, we all want happiness, joy, and freedom continuously for everyone, without any sort of interruptions. So yeah.
And what about the other thing I find is forcing my father and my mother this morning, and she's very. I can find it easy to get sucked into her suffering and despair, and finding myself losing my place of. I can be in quite a good place and can hold myself in a strong place even when I'm with her, which is really challenging. I see her as my greatest teacher in that sense.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, like at some point today, then I lost it, and then I'm not exactly screaming and shouting, but I am crying, and I just can't take it with her.
So
because she's in so much suffering and despair, and she's so toxic.
Yes. Okay. So was it that you were with your mother, and at a certain point you lost it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I understand. So that means that, you know, it's like you can be in a sort of a grounded or an observer state, and then at a certain point the ego hooks into something. Yeah. So it's often like it can be certain words or certain emotions that come from the mother. I think some people are just moving it down. But we'll carry on with it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I was just going to say that I just saw Carrie Fisher recently, and she's got very spiritual.
Oh yes.
So now you're skinny, she's spiritual.
We can be together.
Boy.
Yeah, toy boy. Yeah, that'd be nice.
Sorry, you've got to go.
Thank you so much for coming.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Bye. I like the tube thing.
That's it. Oh, guys, lovely meeting you. Again,
Thanks for the laugh.
Oh. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. It's really good to meet you.
Lovely meeting you guys. Okay. All right. Take
Will
care.
this be a benefit
Yes,
to go home and watch?
Yes, most of it will be, yes.
So that might be good for me and good for you as well.
Yeah, this will be.
I haven't been on your channel yet.
I've got, there's about 70 videos on there. If you go onto the channel, you only see 4, but if you click a button, show all videos, you can see all of them.
And you upload them, so maybe this evening I could watch this.
Yeah, of course. You can watch this, there's about 70 others there. Apologies, some of them are a bit repetitive.
Because I'm trying to remember as much as I can but
Oh, yeah,
it could be
continue.
nice to watch this actually. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, if you like this one, just
Yeah.
bookmark it or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so like so it's like so that you're already doing good, because it means that when you first went in your mother, you weren't like totally gone from the start. So it's going to be so you just need to make progress on what's triggering you in the situation. So you'll see, and you don't have to say if you want, but most likely she said certain words, or she had a certain voice tone, or she had an emotional reaction, or something along those lines happened. So as soon as you're aware as to what the thoughts or what the sounds or what the emotions were, you have the reason. I mean, the reason why the state was lost is because there was a hooking in. Because there's like let's say right now that everyone in this room is meaningless in terms of my ego, then it means like it's very, very easy to be in a state of pure bliss and peace and witnessing and observing, you see. However, if somebody, or even if someone said some special words, it could be an insult or whatever it is, or someone burst out into tears, if that, in terms of the ego, has any special meaning, or has any, I use the word meaning interchangeably with interest, interchangeably with identification, you see, they're all the same. So it's like, if everything is neutral now, it's easy to be in a state of bliss and witnessing and observing and oneness. But if somebody says something, or if somebody walks into the room, and suddenly that state is lost, it's like either the image of the person, or either the words they said, or the tone of words, like the mother tone, her tone of voice, or it could be an emotional reaction. But it just means that to the ego, it hooked into that, you see.
And how that special meaning happen? Why is that some is neutral, and does this come from memory? Or?
This is the, these are just my views, take what you want to leave it. But for me, even from, you could say that, I would say this is, I'm probably giving you more different answer to what you're giving me. You can ask me again. So it's like, for me, this is a world of transcendence. One is incarnated as a spirit here in order to let go of all dualistic hooks and to recognize the oneness. So all things are teachers, all events that pull, if you get to the high states of beingness or bliss or perceiving or witnessing or oneness, then if anything cuts you off, that's a lesson or a teacher, to resolve that hook and release it so that it no longer has an effect on you in the future, you see. So with my mother, and I've done, up to now, for quite a few years, I have a lovely relationship with my mother. I had to let go of a lot of stuff though. So it's like, and it can be released. But in terms of you asking me the question, I'm sorry, I'm answering your question. I'm trying to answer two questions. But in terms, so it's like the spirit is here, and it already has what I'd call karmic patterning or belief systems or unconscious patterns already pre-existing, and then the world in itself, also school, parents, also you pick up belief systems. Also projected status onto parent figures and special thoughts and ideas within the collective consciousness that the parents are essential for survival, and the fear of loss with parents, and this can then be projected onto a special romantic partner or various other symbolic things within the world. But okay, so that's where is that answering the question where it comes from? So all these thoughts, but for me the ego is just a collection of thoughts, both conscious and unconscious, or you could call that the karma. So so it's like these belief systems, like without my, I need my mother for survival, or unless I'm rich, I won't be able to survive. All these thoughts, anyway. So now, or not necessarily thoughts, can break it down into voice tones, angry voice tones. Neutral voice tones and angry voice tones for some. One gets, because of the way the ego is digesting data or computing data, the loss of certain people brings up certain emotions, or if the people threaten, it can bring up certain reactions. So it's the thing then of you have to be your own, you have to find out if you're in a state of bliss and groundedness with, say for example, your mother. It's like at that precise moment that you become unhooked. What happened? It's like, so obviously something got hooked in. Some words were said. I mean, it could be some words were said, or a voice tone was used, or there was an emotional reaction, and then suddenly the state was lost. So in that state, you have to unhook. The next time, you have to figure out what you just go in, you probably find it again. So then in that state, you have to do various things. Like we talk about self-inquiry. I think now it's the appropriate time to go more into the self-inquiry. So it'd be like, okay, she used the tone, but okay, so it seems like I'm lost now. She used a voice tone, and I've lost my state. But then it's like, well, what's observing this? Yeah, what's observing?
But then it's like I then go into this prolonged place of being lost. So there I am being pretty calm and trying to be as kind of emitting as much calm or being reasonable or whatever I can to help her. And then at some point, something will happen. She'll say a certain thing, which I think it's usually to do with blaming me, when she blames me for her life and despair and everything. That I feel like I can't take it because I feel the opposite. And then I start to lose it, and I'm just like, because she's blaming me, because I don't feel I can say anything to her, I then continue to blame. I'm just like, you've got these terrible children. I'm so sorry. We're so awful. This is, it's true. It's your terrible luck. You've got us, and etc. And I've just gone off into this, and I'm not. There's no witnessing. There's no. I've just, gone off.
Well, okay. So look. So there's a few things. One is that there's been blame. Someone's blamed you. Mother's blamed you. So, and then something's taken it personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's two things there. First the blame, and then a you that takes it personally. Yeah. So actually, for me in that situation, let's say my mother blames me, and then my identity suddenly reacts to that. It's like a trauma reaction or whatever. I mean, the question I would use in that place, is to ask, who am I? What am I that is being traumatized by my mother? So then I would check in. I go, it seems like there's lots of thoughts going on. There's a feeling of a gut feeling in my stomach, for example. So that seems to be what I am. And then I'd ask, what's observing these thoughts, or what's observing this feeling in the stomach? You see, because that which is observing the thoughts, that is reacting to my mother, my identity, or the stomach sensations, is not, you unhook, because it's like your identity is getting hooked in. Or you could just ask, what's observing? I'd go into. I would ask inquiry questions into who am I that is being upset by my mother. You see.
It's just having at that point lost my, whatever you want to call it, like awareness, mindfulness, semblance of mind. I lost it at that point, and then I'm not in a place of asking these questions.
Well, that's why you're here. So I'm sort of saying that you need to go in. Yeah. This is what I did with my mother. You need to go in with the intention to unhook as soon as you get hooked in.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll just get hooked in, and you'll spend the rest of the day hooked.
Yeah.
You see. So you have to be willing to unhook. You need to be good. I mean, I'd use my mother as I think it was Marion, isn't it? Well, mothers are like enlightened teachers. They're going to press every single button you've got. So you just for me, doing spiritual work means for me, doing this type of spiritual work means I want to transcend, so that there's no button left that she can push. That's what my mother's assignment was. That's how I treated my mother. Yeah. I just would go into the room and see have I got any buttons left that you can because then I need to transcend those buttons. So next time, hopefully, with a bit of work, that button can no longer be pressed. You see?
And then the work is the kind of going in knowing that to be ready for, when this happens, to be able to go into the self-inquiry.
You go in with the intention that as you can expect that you will be at some point. you know. But you're ready, you see. You've watched a Muji YouTube just before you go in, or you've connected with me or something. And then it's like, you know, you're waiting, and then you're finding out the triggers that you have. It's not really your mother,
Yeah.
because the power is not in your mother. It's what you're holding in mind that can be triggered.
Yeah.
So once you release that, so if you keep self-inquiring, like you just did with these thoughts now, you see, actually once you inquire, if you can inquire in front of your mother, which is going to be far more powerful, you see, then it's like a huge thing. If you can do self-inquiry while your mother's in front of you and saying these things, it's a brilliant thing. Anyway, it would be taking your focus off your mother. Your mother might be going on and on and on, but you're going, what am I, and what is it that's observing the me that's in the thing. So you keep doing that, then you resolve the different triggers. And even, for me, it'd be more important, actually. I mean, you might be going in to be nice, but I'd be going in more to resolve my triggers. So you use it as an exercise, and then even, she might let her carry on and then just be inquiring. I mean, in practical terms, in the early days, when I used to have a lot of reaction to her, I would go in and I'd be practicing my stuff, and if I got too triggered, I'd just leave the room and just recenter myself, maybe not come back. But then my threshold would grow bigger and bigger, and there'd be less and less triggers. And then actually, you know, it has been for, I think, a few years now, there's been no arguments or anything between the two of us. You know, because, but I've described this with you before, mothers are quite, you know, they'll keep testing you for a period of time just to make sure. And then they let you off, you know, because it's like when you can no longer be, when they can no longer press your buttons for a period of time, they stop pressing the buttons, you see. That whole scenario sort of stops. So it's just going in. It's like, you know, for me, I'd go in, I'd want to resolve everything. You know, anything she can say, any type of blame, any type of voice, any type of emotional reaction, because that which is observing any type of word is not reacting to it. And that which is observing any kind of physical reaction in you when you're there is not observing. You know, what's observing the tears, you see? See, that which is observing the tears is not sad, you see? So it's just that thing. And then, and my experience has been, it's good for me not to be triggered, and it's good for my mother that I don't get triggered. And then the relationship actually in my situation became harmonious. So.
And I feel like there is even a sense of urgency to work on this, because she is I think she's about to be diagnosed with cancer or something next week. And that's what they've sort of pre-told her that. So. Right. Yeah, and she's. And it looks. I think it's. I don't know how bad it is, but it looks pretty bad. So I feel like, yeah, I want to. Yeah,
it would be advisable for you to start working on releasing this stuff now.
Yeah.
And I would say that it would be good for you and your mother to be working on this stuff. I'd say, in my view. And, I mean, how do you feel about it in this moment?
Well, I just found the things you said just now so helpful. So I feel.
You feel hopeful.
I feel hopeful. Yeah, and I actually even felt it sounded good. I liked what you were saying about the buttons. How like just like looking like to see what buttons there still are to be pressed.
Yeah, mothers know all the buttons you have.
Yeah.
They know
yeah. But that thing of knowing and going. I think it's because it's been so intense. So basically, yesterday my aunt had just died as well this weekend. So her funeral. Right. Yesterday, my mum's sister. So it's been so intense, and then had the news about my dad's end of life health, bad news about my mum's health, all consecutive days this week.
Right.
So it's it's just been so much that it's been hard to. I think it's just all been a bit too intense. Slightly lost a thread of what I was saying, but I think. I just maybe having space. I think because I've had no space from her,
yes,
and from the intensity of everything. But that thing of like recollecting and having the awareness and going in prepared. Whereas I think because it's been so much, I've just been having to go in all the time without being. Even though I did listen to some Muji this week and other people I find helpful. About 3 or 4 different spiritual teachers this week. And so on some level I know I need that so much at the moment. And I was sort of feeling like I was doing well, but then like I said, I lost it today and I thought, oh, but that's okay.
No, that's okay.
It's okay.
I don't want to get, you know, for me always the intention is not to allow myself to get disconnected for too long. You know, even with my mother in the early days, you know, I'd go in with the intention to try and stay in the observer.
Yeah.
Or if she does something to like inquire or to, actually one of the things I do with my mother is just to try and go in, before I go in a strong state of observation, you know, like that detached. And I would also kind of know that, you know, it's been like the intention would be nothing she can say or do is going to take me out of my observer. So it's just like a neutral witnessing and observing, and just to be there, beingness with her. But there's like switching off, trying to switching off a button that anything is trying to like get hooked in. It's like you switch the button off, and it's like you can be in the observer, just witnessing everything, and just you try and keep the observer just before you go in the room. The intention is to stay in the observer and not let yourself get hooked. But even if you get hooked, getting hooked, as long as you, in the first moment of getting hooked, if your intention is to start inquiring, yeah, so it's like, who am I that's just had a reaction? What am I? Am I my thoughts? Am I a feeling in the body? Well, what's observing that? Okay, this thought's starting with my mother, you know, starting to mingle with the story of, oh, she's blaming me and I'm feeling, but what's observing these thoughts, you see? Or suddenly it's overwhelming feelings. Then ask the question, what's observing the overwhelming feelings, you see? So immediately the intention is not outward, and it's not actually in giving the thoughts power or the feeling power, because it's like trying to go, it's like asking what's observing the thoughts, what's observing the feeling. So immediately there's like a detachment, because if you're attached to the thoughts and the feelings, it's like putting gas on the fire. The thoughts go off and off and off, and you're unhooked. And if you get too long into the thoughts, then you can be the whole evening unhooked, you see, off in huge thoughts and emotional reactions. So you want to be like cutting it off, and if it's too intense, what I usually do is I leave.
Yeah.
And then I try and regroup, because I don't see it's any benefit for me to be totally like being disconnected with my mother for a long period of time. I don't think a great service to me or to her.
I think it's because there was this, at the funeral, I was there from Thursday night, so I've been in for a prolonged period. So I was quite successful even like yesterday in the funeral, which I was quite worried about, but I think I was able to be quite sort of witness or observer and really be with her and be aware of what was happening and support her, and she really felt that. And I could really have that, you know, I literally was having my awareness of my feet on the floor, my breath, of what was going on, and it was really wonderful to actually be able to be there, this thing I've been dreading. But then it's almost like it ran out at some point. I could do it for like, you know, a day and a half, but I don't know.
Oh, you did very well.
You know, it was so intense this morning, and I wasn't able to keep it up for that. So even that's good to know, I guess. I know I can't do it for too much time at a stretch at the moment.
No, and a day and a half is brilliant, really. So if you can keep that up for a day and a half. Yeah, I would, the intention is as soon as I get disconnected, keep inquiring immediately. And if I can't inquire myself out of it, I'll leave. And then just take a bit of space to try and reconnect to the observer. And just clean out. I don't see it. Because for my intention, of course, my intention is enlightenment. So it's like, and it's the Course as well. I mean, the Course says I'm not a victim of anything in the world. So it just means that anything that I'm hooking into, I want to resolve, so that it can no longer hook me in.
Yeah.
You see, I don't want money to hook me in. I don't want fame to hook me in. I don't want anything hooking me in, because as soon as I get hooked into something with special status, it'll mean I'll be out on a roller coaster of, money. If I have a lot of money, then I'm safe. If I don't have a lot of money, then I'm not safe. Or also the physical body. I don't want to unhook from, I'm not a body. I want to hook, this body may fall down one day, but I'm not the body, you see. I don't want to see my parents as bodies. If I identify myself as that which is witnessing the body, and in essence is not the body, then of course how I perceive others and how I perceive others passing away is going to shift. Because when I think of my parents as a body, and I think they're dying, then I feel sad. But if I perceive myself as the observer, or the eternal spirit, or the oneness that can never die, then it's like, oh, but even if they leave the body, their essence is that. And the feeling of sadness is either far diminished or isn't there, if it's in a strong state, you see. So you don't see them. You see, maybe the physical body might have been a temporary house, but that's not what they are, you see. But it depends what I am as to what I see what they are, and or to the extent that I have. But there's also a process for me from Hawkins. You see, you have to take out the attachment. The attachment has two components, or a few components, like the suppressed feelings. If it's a strong attachment, there might be a lot of feelings that you have to either observe and detach from, or just allow to process out, feel out.
How do you allow to process out?
So if you're not going to, you can do the observer. I think is the fastest and quickest way to dissolve suppressed feelings.
Which is just asking what is observing this.
That can actually lead to what I call the miraculous. Like things can just shift in a split second, because it's like that's like the divine. It's like my body mind has collected up all these attachments with a huge reservoir of shame, guilt, sadness, anger, and if I do it the normal way, I have to process this stuff for significant periods of time, which I was referring to. But my experience has been when you're in the observer, sometimes these things can shift in a split second. It's like you pop them out, you know. And if you've had the experience, it's like you're in this huge well of emotion. And you just, it's like you ask the question, what's observing it? But I think there is some grace as well at the same time as you ask the question. And suddenly it's like the emotion vanishes in a split second. And it's like by being in that state, it's like dissolved that much, what would have been like hours and hours and days of crying and processing is gone in a split second. Because it's like,
because it's just seen.
It's not for me well, it's seen, but it's seen, yes, and it's like that's the state of like God consciousness. You see, when I'm more in the state of an ego, me as a sense of thing, and I'm trying to feel out and process out the feelings, it takes days and weeks because I'm not at that high vibration where things. So if I'm in I'm the body and I'm feeling sad and I need to cry because my mother's gone. It might take a few weeks, you know, for me to do that. But it's like, it's like me disappear. You know, there is no me that's trying to feel out all this sadness in the body. It's like in that state, such a high vibration that this stuff, rather than taking weeks, can sometimes go in a split second.
And then how is it? Because so often, I find sometimes I'll talk to you, or even just you ask a question, and then I do feel like I'm in that, much more in that place. And how is it that one can be in that place more?
It's the love of that place. You know, so for me it would be like I know someone in this group who's watching Muji non-stop, you see. So it becomes like at a certain point there's a drivenness, which you can say is the love of that more than the love of attachment. So you could classically spoken of as the love of God as the biggest love of all. So or like I've shared it, it's like I don't want anything out in the external world to be able to trigger me. I want to maintain that all the time. Like, you know, if my pet pigeon dies, you know, that's not going to stop it. I did have a pet pigeon that did die, but anyway. So, so it's like, so when, are you the witnesser now? Are you the observer now? Or you're not? Are you a collection of thoughts in the body?
I think I can observe.
Yeah, okay, you said I think I can observe. So what is this I that thinks it
There is observation.
Okay, so there's observing now. Clear observing? Oh, so it's going in and out, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, fair enough. But there is actually an observer that is observing the in and out as well. Okay, so it's just the thing of when you're in the pure observer, that which is witnessing all, it's very easy to maintain it. Well, it's kind of easy to maintain. Of course, if you see your mother, it's a different thing. But it's easy, and then you want to resolve your mother, you see, do the inquiry as soon as anything is triggered around your mother. So it's like, or if you're not in the pure observer now, then it's like you want to be doing self-inquiry now. Like, I'm happy to do it with you if you want. Okay, so what are you right now?
I'm sorry.
What are you right now?
Maybe I'm a being hearing you.
Okay, the I am hearing you. What is this I am?
It goes in and out of some thoughts and a being.
Okay, there's so there's thoughts and then there's the being.
Yeah.
You mean the expansive being, yes? Okay, thoughts and the being. Okay, and in this second, are you the thoughts or the being?
It goes in and out. So if it's in thoughts or being.
Okay, so thoughts and being are going in and out.
Yeah.
So there is an observer that is observing in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So just, so there's thoughts, identification with thoughts, and then there's expansiveness. So imagine, so there's thoughts and then there's expansiveness, thoughts and then there's expansiveness. So allow that to continue to happen. Yeah, so there's thoughts and expansiveness. There is something, while this is going on, there is something which is observing the thoughts and then the expansiveness, which is not the thoughts and the expansiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go to that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now, what are you now?
Expansiveness.
Okay. So it's just that. So it's like any time you're unresolved, then resolve it. You see, it's that dedication to, as soon as you're unresolved, just to resolve it, or as soon as your mother comes in, to resolve it. Yeah. And then eventually it becomes easy. It's like the observer or the beingness, it's like at a certain point it becomes like that's your motive. Mm-hmm. It's not that there's a you that's making a motive, it's like to be in that, in this moment, and then the next moment. And if there's suddenly a problem, like it's flicking between thoughts and beingness, then just to ask what's observing, clarify it until there's clarity. And then if you can maintain that in a nice environment, then start going into those difficult environments, like with family.
And even also busy environments.
Busy environments as well. Yeah, the world.
Yeah,
can do it in a quiet room and then do it on the street. So in the early days, it's easy just to do it. It's nice to do it in a quiet place, be that which is witnessing and clarified beingness. Then walk in the park. Can you maintain that in the park? And then can you maintain that on the street? Then you can maintain it in a spiritual group. Can you maintain it with your mother? So like if I was to go into a noisy place, suddenly something is interested in noise. Yeah. So then it's like suddenly there's distraction. I'm being disturbed by the noise on the street. Okay, so then what's observing the noise? Is that which is observing the noise, is that disturbed? Or what is the I that is being disturbed? Is my thinking is disturbed? Okay, what's observing thinking? And then you'll find that you'll clarify that the beingness or the witnesser can be in a busy street and there's no stop to that. And then you have like family members, you see. You can do it with your friend, you can be in the beingness with your friend, but then with your mother there seems to be an issue. So then it's like, is it my thoughts that have the issue, or is it a noise? So just again, ask what's observing. And then again, eventually as you clarify, because it could be like, like with my mother, when she used a voice tone, I had to what's observing that voice tone, that sound? Is that which is observing that sound, is that no, it's not. So then each time you do that, then the reaction becomes smaller and smaller. And then eventually it has no, it's like that noise doesn't have an effect. Because it's only the meaning of that noise, and that is my mother's voice tone, that voice, and then certain words, if she's criticising. What am I that's being upset by the criticism, and what's observing the I? You're just unhooking, and you're going to, because every time you've gone to the observer hasn't got a problem. The beingness hasn't got a problem. You see, the observer of noise is not disturbed by noise. The observer of thoughts is not disturbed by thoughts. And even if there's crying going on in the body, that which is observing, the tears, is not sad. Because actually, the feelings are actually like objects, you see. There is an observation of like sadness coming up. There's actually a witnessing of the sad, and then it passing. So actually, like a wave of sadness, the observer is not sad as it comes and goes. And also a noise. There's something is witnessing the noise which is not distracted by the noise. So it's like what I often say in this room, you've heard me say it before, it's like, I was talking to the group, and then I talked about the noise outside. And then when I mentioned it, everyone heard the noise, but before they weren't. So when there's pure observer, or no interest, it's like, actually, it's silent. So it can be a busy street, but actually there's only silence, you see, there's no effect. And when you go more into the observer, deeper into the observer, into the beingness, it's like everything is like, there's just bliss, you see, just silent bliss, you see. So, but as soon as the ego has identification, like with the form of the mother or the voice, or certain words, as soon as there's that hook in, then to the extent that it's grabbed onto, then the sudden loss of the state, loss of the bliss, loss of the witnessing. But also you want to be able to, you want to practice, the observer or the beingness strongly in easy environments. And really, if you're going to meet someone difficult, I would try and be in a strong state before going in, and have the intention that you're going to get unhooked out. And so you're like in ready mode, you see.
That's so helpful.
You'll be ready mode, because like going to my mother, it's really like, my intention with my mother is that nothing she can say, nothing she can do, no voice tone, there's nothing that can take me out of the observer. That was my intention for many years. So I'd sit in the early days it was difficult, I'd have to take a dose, and then suddenly I'd get too triggered. So I'd have to leave the room and come back in again, but then it got easier in that way. So, yeah. How are you feeling about it now?
Pretty good.
When these situations occur, I think it's also a great opportunity. When the big things come, it's also an opportunity to release a lot of stuff. And like I said, with my mother, I'm sure she wants me to be happy in her essence. Maybe from her ego she'd have preferred me to have been a certain way. But in her essence, she just wants me to be happy, joyous and free in every moment. So it's like just resolving this stuff on a spiritual level. I think I'm going to save myself. I've not had, both my parents are alive. But I think it's such a grace that I can be working on this stuff before they die, before they go. Because I know to the extent that I've resolved this stuff, it'll be less of an impact. And to the extent I haven't resolved any of this stuff, it's going to be a huge impact. And, like I've said, with my mother, I get on great with her. We have lovely chats. And we have an argument for years now, I think. So that's been valuable for me to have that before she goes, by resolving the triggers, you see, by resolving all the triggers that she can sort of thing. And I think you're consciously aware as well that just by maintaining that state of grace and groundedness and witnessing love, that's a great thing that you give, you see. To be able to hold that, whether she understands it or not. in that place. But what are you now?
Quite light.
That's good. Is there anything else you want to ask? So, yeah, because there's some new people, and very, very quickly, I'm trying to make it as quick as possible to just give an intro so it doesn't sort of isn't the same thing every week. But very, very quickly, my story. I'll try and make it as quick as possible. My story.
Make up a new story every week.
I could make up a new story. That would be. Well, I could have past life hypnosis and try and remember all my other stories. You know, when I was a Buddhist monk or a pirate or something. I don't know. But okay. So very, very quickly, how I came to the course and Muji and Hawkins and everything, who were my primary teachers, was that, some of you know this story, but 16 years ago, working in the stock market, and at the time I was very much into, I had addiction issues. My primary addiction was food addiction, so I was a food addict. And I found out I had other addictions like workaholism and stuff with relationships as well. So all these addictions, but food being the primary. And then suddenly I wasn't into spirituality at all, but then suddenly I had kidney failure on a flight back from New York. My feet swelled up, my mother was terrified, I was admitted to the Royal Free Hospital. And the doctors literally didn't know what had caused I think it's such a rare thing to lose about 70% of your kidney function in one day. It was like I was literally facing death at a razor-fast rate. So they were literally taking about 10 tubes of blood at a time from my arm to give to every single department around the Royal Free to try and figure out what was causing such an aggressive decline in my health. So. I mean, I did previously have a degree in biochemistry amongst other things. So I knew the two major things that they were looking for would have been either an aggressive autoimmune disorder or some kind of rare infection that they're not able to track. So I was literally facing death in the hospital bed, which is a great thing. And then suddenly it was like, as I was in that situation, suddenly it was like a heavenly, timeless bliss came upon me. And I mean, it sounds incredible when I say it, but I actually heard a voice say, you need to find a spiritual solution in that spiritual experience. It was electrifying in that it changed the whole course of my life. And it didn't tell me, I always joke, that it didn't tell me where to find the spiritual experience. So it just told me I needed to get a spiritual solution. So I spent years, about 3 or 4 years, actually going to all kinds of groups, Buddhist groups, Christian churches, Indian sects, and all kinds of things in London, trying to figure out. Anyway, eventually, I was in one group. It was like I can say it. It was called the something like the American Matrix. Anyway, something like that. So they were doing something like radionics, a kind of healing, the photograph kind of thing, technology thing. And I was assigned a mentor, an East German man named Hans. And Hans was a lovely man. He had spent his whole life going around the world visiting different gurus. He spent his whole life just going to this place. He heard about that guru, he heard about that guru. Anyway, he was assigned in that organization my mentor. And I spoke to him, and one day he said to me, "Oh, you should watch." He said to me, "You should watch this DVD," and he just gave me a DVD. So I just took it home. I was really kind of curious. He just gave me this DVD out of the blue. I put it in the DVD player, and then as it came on, I had what I now know is a Kundalini experience. It was like overwhelming bliss suddenly occurred, like the tingling up the spine. And the man speaking on the DVD was a man named Dr. David R Hawkins. And I knew then, it was like, I can only describe it as an inner knowing that he would be one of my spiritual teachers. It's just like, it was not an intellectual thing, I just knew that. So I later found out, for some of you might be relevant, he was one of the sponsees of a man named Bill Wilson in the 12-Step Fellowships who founded AA. He happened to be his sponsee, Hawkins, but he, I would say, went on to enter into what's classically called enlightenment, that spiritual state, which I'll may go into a bit later on. Anyway, he described very quickly why I got so enthused about the Course in Miracles was that Hawkins said, he did something called kinesiology, which is like muscle testing. Some of you may be very new to it, but he developed a map where you can measure the vibrations of different things on a thing. So anyway, he said that the basics of spirituality are the 12 steps. And they calibrate at unconditional love. So they're like the basics of spirituality. But you know, the thing with the 12 steps is aimed at unconditional love, but it doesn't. You know, the Course in Miracles is a much higher vibration because it's aimed at dissolving the ego. It's aimed at enlightenment, full dissolution of the ego. So the 12 steps is not aimed at that. So you still accept that your ego or your body is who you are and you pray to a higher power. Whereas in the Course in Miracles, very quickly, I mean, some of my favorite lessons are all my thoughts are meaningless. All my thoughts are meaningless. I think nearly everyone's heard that lesson in here. Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, that's like spiritual genius. It means that you don't need. I mean, there is nothing from the ego. The ego has nothing to offer. And we'll go into that later with the lesson that we'll be doing today. All my thoughts are meaningless is like, and you could say when we'll come back to the topic on special relationships later on, of course, what is the problem then from having full spiritual realization? Well, some of the thoughts are what would be termed special. Some thoughts are special thoughts, or some images are what's called special thoughts. That would be the Course language. In 12 steps, we would probably say some thoughts have higher power status. And Mooji calls them, some of you who watched his, like I'm an avid Mooji fan, he calls them 5-star thoughts. He calls them the 5-star thoughts, which you can't let go of in your consciousness. Anyway, so the terminology, they all refer to the same thing. So all my thoughts are meaningless, and of course, I think everyone here is advanced, so no one's going to be shocked by this. So for me, the most strongest, I think, and I think Mooji said so as well, I agree, and the Course doesn't say it straight away, but it taps into it a bit later on, which is, I'm not a body, I am free, for I am as God created me. So for me, it's like one of the most strongly held belief systems within the body. It's like a huge vacuum, you know, this body is what I am. And then that huge attachment to the body and the huge identification with the body is so strong that it prevents what I'd call higher states of spiritual awareness or realizations. So those are kind of the thoughts and the Course in Miracles. Anyway, why did I become so, very, very quickly, why did I become so enthusiastic about doing the lessons in A Course in Miracles? I've been very quickly doing the lessons more or less religiously, probably the wrong word, for about, I've been doing the lessons every day with great enthusiasm because of what I heard Hawkins say. Hawkins, you know, because of he had alcoholic issues as well, and he had about 20 illnesses at the time. He was facing death as well. Alcoholic illnesses, severe infections, bones jutting out in the wrong place. I mean, so many different things, ulcers and everything. And he did I'll give you a quick shot, but he did the Course in Miracles, and all of his illnesses left. All of his illnesses left without any problems. And then he started, and this is just the fast view, he started like a kind of called attitudinal healing group, kind of a Course in Miracles group in the States for people with grave illnesses, funnily enough. And there, people with AIDS, cancer, myasthenia gravis, those illnesses vanished while doing the spiritual work. At the time, I had kidney failure. I had to use walking sticks sometimes. I had to use an asthma inhaler just to try and breathe sometimes. So I had I was suffering a lot with really horrible physical ailments. I mean, also I did go to 12-step fellowship for food addiction, but I had horrible physical ailments which were really horrific. So when I heard Hawkins did the course and 20 of his illnesses left, and then he ran a group for people with serious, life-threatening illnesses and people with cancer and AIDS left. And I'd had that spiritual experience with Hawkins, so it was like I had 100% faith that what he told me with the course was true. I had zero doubt. So I just, it's like, I want my kidney failure gone. I don't want to be on a machine 8 hours a day to keep me alive. No, thank you. I don't want to have to use asthma inhalers. It was horrible. It's not nice. I don't recommend kidney failure and dialysis machines to anyone. It's not pleasant. So anyway, all of that has gone. I'll give you the short story. I'm not going to have a transplant. The things like, I've had so many miracles doing this work, but my teachers, oh yes, okay, I'll stop on the course. That's why I'm so enthusiastic about the power of the course. And we'll come on to this in a moment when we do cancelling of beliefs, which is the fundamental lesson which we have here every week of the huge power of belief systems to manifest if you hold them in mind. You see, I mean, if I hold the thought of cancer in mind, or if I hold the thought of kidney failure in mind, or if I hold the thought of gout, or whatever, even if I pick these up unconsciously, or I pick them up from the collective consciousness, they have such huge power to manifest huge suffering within the individuals or within the collective as a whole. So anyway, we'll go into that in a moment. So very, very enthusiastic. I still do the Course in Miracles every day, and because I've had so much suffering with physical ailments. But I think I used it a lot for physical ailments, but beliefs in cancer, AIDS, in kidney failure, in gout, but it can be in poverty, in bad relationships, in special relationships. I mean, the cancelling of beliefs can be used in any form of belief system that is held within the collective consciousness. So very, very enthusiastic about the course. Anyway, Hans was very instrumental. He gave me the DVD with Hawkins, and Hawkins is one of my spiritual teachers. Also, he said to me, well, I'll cut the story short, he also said to me, there's a man in Brixton called Muji, that you should see. I mean, it took me a while before I followed his advice, but then I did. And it was like bliss, being in the Muji groups. It's like being in the sea of bliss. And then I had a one-to-one with Muji, and he talks about, there's no mincing his words. I think I can say it safely in this room. He's talking about like chopping the ego off. Death to the ego kind of thing. No more ego. Anyway, so when I had, I asked for a one-to-one with him, which is like to be alone in a room with Muji, which for me was like, it's okay to be in a room full of people where you just put your hand up and you're at the back of but to be alone in a room with Muji was like very, very scary. Anyway, on the day I manifested like a huge gout attack in my feet, huge pain. It was like such resistance. There was so much fear and resistance to being alone in the room with him. Anyway, by some grace, I did go there, and he asked me the self-inquiry questions, which we'll hopefully get around to a bit later. But essentially, what he asked was, I'd been watching a lot of Muji, and I'd been going. I was very fortunate when he wasn't like what I would call a mega guru at the time. He was just a man in a little flat with a little tiny room where about 20 of us like squeezed in. Some of you know him from that time. Anyway, so he asked me, I said, look, I know that I'm not my thoughts, and I know I can get to this like kind of plane of witnessing, And he just asked me, well, is there anyone behind that? What's observing that? And it was like, in that moment I had a white light spiritual experience, which I can only describe as infinite light, infinite power. I mean, you can't describe it. Infinite light, infinite power, and infinite love beyond description. And there was no world, actually. There was no duality. There was no me, there was no thought, there was no that. The best analogy I can make, and it's not a right analogy, would be like, imagine being in the middle of the sun with that intensity of light and power and trying to see a shadow or any contrast. I mean, to actually have a thought or to actually see a shadow or to see an other with that level of intensity, love and power is just not possible. The order of magnitude is not possible to hold any dualistic type of sensation. Anyway, having said that, it was like that was the experience. There was nothing. There was just infinite light. And then suddenly it seemed like a thought. It's tried to emerge, and something connected with the thought. And in an instant, it seemed like I was back in the room with Muji. But I was in a state of absolute bliss, you know, absolute bliss. Anyway, he told me to leave, and it was like there was no me. It was like floating, and it was like everything was. There was just stunning clarity and beauty to everything that was witnessed. And on the tube, just looking at the passengers, I had to go to work, unfortunately. There was just tears coming down the thing because everyone was so exquisitely beautiful. And I just want to quickly relate this because someone said something earlier. At work, you know, I was doing my telephone sales for the charities, and it was like I was in such bliss that, you know, my talking wasn't very good. I wasn't been able to talk for it. And there was no one was taking out, you know, any direct debits, you know, which was unusual for me because I was in a state of bliss. And eventually, of course, the thought came, you know, you're going to lose your job, you know, and you're not going to have anyone. So then it was like the thought, there was latching onto the thoughts. And then it was like, by the end of the session, because I was really trying to hold on to the thoughts and trying to think properly, it was like the bliss was gone. But I was able to like excel, you see. So I was able, the work managed to like make me lose the whole state. So I think someone will relate to that. Okay, so actually for myself, we're just talking about myself, I mean, more or less, because Hawkins said 12 steps, Course in Miracles, and he also, what I'd say, calibrated certain spiritual teachers. Ramana Maharishi, he calibrated at the level of enlightenment. Muji is a teacher of we could say, of descent of Ramana, and the non-dual self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is something that I'm very big on. We'll get to that later. So that's very, very briefly the story. We're going to go next on to the cancelling of beliefs, where we'll go around. That's the reason why I'm so enthusiastic about the cancelling of beliefs. Even though from a non-dualistic perspective it might seem a bit wordy to be like, you know, of course, you know, it's like, well, maybe not, you know. So in lesson 14 of A Course in Miracles, many of you may know it, God did not create, for example, God did not create war, so it is not real. God did not create cancer, so it is not real. But there's, you know, my experience has been, even though they sound a bit wordy and it sounds a bit bizarre or kooky, you know, I think I've had awesome miracles happen through that, and I know Hawkins has and others. I mean, like major miracles if you can let go of cancer and AIDS and things like that, and kidney failure. So it's got to be powerful. But he gave what I call a more sort of atheistic friendly version of that. If you don't like God did not create cancer, you can say, I cancel my belief in cancer. I'm an infinite being subject only to what I hold in mind. Very quickly, also, this is a recent thing which most of you know of, I found that you can use it on other people. So my mother had this horrible swelling in her leg, and I had the intuition to do it for my mother. God did not create edema in my mother's leg. And within 2 days, she reported to me that the swelling was going down, and within a week it was gone. So I thought that was like the Holy, you could say the Holy Spirit telling me, it also works on others, you don't need to only do it for yourself. But I was in so much suffering, I only did it on myself. So it can be used on others. Very briefly, why do I think that works? And just for those who have a slightly scientific background, I think a lot of people have heard of the Heisenberg principle, which is, I think, opening up the reversal of the doorway of the paradigm of science, which is that the world operates on causality. which is, you know, that billiard ball made that billiard ball move, you see, or this thing made an effect on that thing, you see. I don't know if that made sense, but it's like the ego sees things outside and says, that ball made that ball move, or that person made that person run. That's kind of, I don't know if that's my explanation of causality. That's how the ego interprets the world. You know, it's a major shift from going from causality to the higher realms of spirituality. However, the Heisenberg principle, which is for me just the baby steps of science, which is that if a scientist observes something, the matter actually changes. It might change from a wave to a particle, or from a particle to a wave. And just by an observer silently observing something, not, you know, just the observation of something creates a change in the matter. Now, that is just a scientist, but what if you had a saint? You know, a scientist has got quite a strong ego, quite a logical mind. But what if you had someone who'd done much more refining? How much power would the witnessing of a saint have, you know? Or what about, so that's the, I won't go into it, the classic literature, Indian literature for thousands of years, have described the siddhis, which are the extraordinary, but they've witnessed it because they've been doing spirituality for quite a while now in India. Anyway, that's supposed to be a joke, never mind. But they've classically defined it, like, you know, being in two places at once, you know, being all of these things, all the laws that you think start to break down at certain very high levels of consciousness where the ego has been released. And many of you know that even Christian saints have had, you know, people around them have spontaneous miracles because of the level of power. So, hence, of course, if you're dissolving your ego, the realm of miracles and the power of miracles, but it's like what's confrontational to the ego is that actually if you dissolve the ego, infinite power is available. It's not in like, so the Course talks about, you know, this drug is making you better. If you take this drug, then your cancer will go away, which is causality. If you believe, you know, anyway, I won't go into too much, but actually, if you let go of the belief of cancer, you know, that's, we'll let it go. Okay.